Hello, hello. I'm on Periscope and I'm on YouTube and I need to make sure I have my volume up because I forget. And there we go. Um, and there's still a delay for some reason on YouTube. So no, with my narcissist support Facebook page, that is run by a very valued volunteer by the name of Dawn, and she gets a lot of the memes and stuff off of my Facebook page and, or not, off of Pinterest and now off of Instagram. So, but she does her own, she just kind of scours the internet and stuff. Okay. Yay. YouTube stream is going now. So hi, Cecilia. Doug has a commercial. Do tell. Overcoming Understanding is here. Henry's here. Doug is here. S9 Arena is here. Okay, so I'm in the middle of a chat here on Periscope. Let me move my computer down. That's better. Now I can see things. Um, so the question that was asked on Periscope, and you know what? I'm gonna see if I can move this like over. I'm filming on my phone, so hold on. Let's see. Does this work? Does this work? Oh my God. No, it doesn't. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, is that better? Yes, I think that's better. So now I can kind of like look in the same direction and see if I'm getting messages on Periscope. So the question was asked on Periscope. A gal had mentioned that she was dating this guy, and then he upped, and they broke up. He blamed her for it. He moved in with his new girlfriend like shortly after, and she was wanting to know if he was in love with her. And so my response was, you know, most likely no, even if he's not a narcissist. But that's a very selfish, hurtful thing to do. So, I don't. I'm just saying, but he hasn't known her long enough to love her, right? So knowing somebody for 2 or 3 months and moving in right away like that, that's really, really, that's based off of lust. That's based off of convenience. That's not based off of love. Love takes time. So to answer your question, that's and yes, okay. So he was blaming you for everything. I don't know the dynamics of your relationship, but you know, there's always two sides to every story, and whatever you did can't make somebody up and leave you and then drive them to move in with somebody after a few months. Like, odds are, like, generally with the most narcissists is like the discard feels really sudden. It feels very like sudden, right? Like you're not anticipating it. But the reality is they've probably been planning it for a while. And so that's why it's just kind of so, well, it's part of the reason they're so nonchalant about it and they're so easily to move on because they always have something else going in the works. They're just very manipulative people. So it's hard for us to understand that because those of us that have been in relationships with a narcissist, we thought we were really in a relationship, and so we thought our partner was also in a in a relationship too, and so we thought that the highs and lows that we were experiencing with them were the normal highs and lows in a relationship. We didn't realize that they were a highly manipulative person and that they were, had this blinding degree of selfishness and this jaw-dropping level of entitlement. And so a lot of that kind of stuff isn't seen until after the fact, until like now, until what you're going through. So I hope that answers your question. He promised he was getting help. He admitted he never even went to therapy. Well, now he's a liar and a cheater. So, if I were you, I would just say, thank you, God, for showing me the truth about this person before I wasted any more time with them. Because this other girl, it's not like she got a prize. I mean, this guy's going to continue to leave hurt and heartache in his wake because that's what he does. So he obviously doesn't have open, honest, sincere, or solutions oriented communication, right? Which we need that if we're going to be in a healthy relationship. This guy was lying, he was deceiving, he was manipulating, he was probably already seeing her, right? That's all deal breaker behavior. Like, you can't really work with that because the other person's not trying to be in a relationship. They're trying to just get whatever they want. So I know that you're in a tremendous amount of pain right now, but this is a good thing. This is a good thing that he left. And I hope for your sake that he stays gone. This is not your fault. This guy has like major character flaws, right? So try to just stay really busy, try to stay really good to yourself, and just realize that that's a very toxic relationship. And, you know, it would have never ended well. It would have just never ended well because you would have never been able to trust him ever again, right? So if a person lies and deceives and cheats and spins like that, then you can't work with that. I know he's a narc. I'm suffering with PTSD. He met her online. She lives a few hours away. Well, the PTSD part is very normal. So a lot of us struggle with that. And the online dating thing. So I mean, there you go. It's not like that to me is even worse, right? It's not even like he just kind of, met her at work and something developed. He was actively out pursuing other women. So I know you're hurt. And it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be hurt because in your mind, you were in a relationship, right? And it's really hard. It takes some time. It takes some time. It takes some time to move forward in these things because it's like the rug has been pulled out from underneath you. And I get it. I've been there, and when that happens, when your whole sense of stability in this relationship and in your life and in your living situation and with income, because maybe there was, you guys are both helping to pay bills. So there's this huge disruption that happens across the board in your life when relationships end suddenly. And then especially when you start finding out that there was a lot of your relationship that was built on a lie. And that's where that kind of the PTSD type feelings come from because it starts it's that whole level of uncertainty where it's like, well, then what else is a lie and what else can't I trust? And it's the paranoia and it's the bad dreams and it's the ruminating where we're going over and over and over and over in our mind trying to make sense of what happened, especially if they're saying that it's our fault, right? How could we have made this work? Did we just lose the best thing that ever happened to us? That is crazy making. But again, I would encourage you focus on what you do know, which is this person has absolutely zero character. And this is not the kind of man that you want as the father of your children or in your life at all, right? So it hurts now. Just be good to yourself. Just lots of hugs. Yeah. She said the flashbacks are mental. They are. They are, and they'll pass. They'll pass. And so you just tell yourself, it's like you treat yourself like you have the emotional flu, right? So when you have the physical flu, you be really good to yourself. You drink hot tea, you eat, chicken noodle soup, or if you're vegetarian, you eat vegetable noodle soup. And yes, okay. And yes, remember to tell yourself that the person you fell in love with never existed. And so kind of my spin on that is I tell people, yes, you loved who you thought they were. And that's normal. Okay, good. So you are reframing it to yourself that way. Good, because that helps our brain, I think, to more readily process it. Because when we're saying two different things, right? When we're like, I love this person, I hate this person, our brain is like, this doesn't compute, right? And so then we stay stuck because we're still trying to figure out what all happened. But yes, if you can reframe and just realize, yeah, there were a lot of things I liked about him. There were a lot of things that I missed. But you know what? I felt really intensely towards that person. But imagine how good it's going to feel when it's real. Because this wasn't real. This is an illusion. You were not in a relationship. You were in a manipulationship. And there's a big difference there. But it does pass. And you are healing every single day. in so many like little tiny ways that you probably aren't even aware of right now. And in a week from now, you're going to be at a very different place. And then from a month from now, you're very different place. So hang in there and just, like I said, treat yourself like you have the emotional flu. This is your time to do a bunch of things that make you feel good and comfortable. So, watching comedies and getting your nails done and journaling and reading, taking time to read one of your favorite books and just talking to friends and doing things that make you feel good. So I hope that that helps. And, you know, hang in there. It does pass. It does pass. And he's a jerk and you didn't miss it. You're not missing out on this. So, okay, so let's see what we've got going on over here on YouTube. Let's see. Pepper Unkempt is here. Marie is here. Been There is here. Jones Rising is here. Jones says, I'm living with my narcissist sister and working on emotional detachment. Oh, that is such a good skill to practice. It's so one thing to say and another thing to do, isn't it? So, so how's that going? How's it going with detaching? And I guess what are you doing to detach? What has been working for you? Martin says, hi, I'm new here. Why is it so damn hard to get away from narcs? Well, so here's the thing. There's no shortage of like highly problematic people out there. And so this is one of the things that I go through with, on my channel over and over and over again. So people, and I was there too, where people get caught up in, well, how do I know if they're just kind of your run of the mill asshole or if they're truly a narcissist? And, my response is it really doesn't matter. Problematic people are problematic people, and they really need to be kind of avoided at all costs because they're energy vampires. So, statistically speaking, narcissists are only, I think it's right around 2 or 3% of the population. But if you include in all of the other problematic people out there, and there's kind of this large spectrum, I think a lot of them probably would register as having narcissistic personality disorder if they were to get tested. But again, like all of that aside, because that can, that trips people up right and left. And who's to say if you're going to get an accurate diagnosis or, kind of whatever. But I would say there's a lot of the population that has a lot of problematic behavior. And the reason that you're seeing it more now is because you're becoming more aware of what in fact is problematic behavior. So whereas before, if you were like most of us, where we just kind of went through life thinking that everybody was like us and that if we were kind and giving and good and loving, that other people would be the same. And when you encounter a few narcissists in your life, you really realize that that they are out there. Like there's a lot of them out there, and now you're just spotting the behavior more and more. So it's good. It means that you're leveling up in your life is what that kind of means. So, but I will say it is a little crazy making it first, because it's, I thought this too. And I'm like, I am seeing these people everywhere. Like, what is wrong with me? Am I being paranoid? Am I being hypervigilant? And then now that enough time has passed, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm actually seeing problematic behavior for what it is. So, okay, Henry and a couple others are talking about abuse statistics for men and women and kind of how that plays out. So, yeah, so here's the thing with like abuse statistics. I really don't think a lot of them are tracked as far as abuse towards men goes. It's only been, I want to say, this is like crazy. I want to say it's only been in the past 5 or 10 years that they started tracking rates for men being raped. So before, a decade ago, that wasn't even really a thing. It was just kind of thought like, oh yeah, how is a guy going to get raped? Well, there's lots of different ways actually that men can get raped. So there's a lot of statistics that are in crimes and abuse that is happening to men, but it's not being reported and it's not being tracked accurately. And I think in large part, if you kind of, with anything, if you follow the funding, I think you can kind of see why that is. Because it's a lot, there's just this whole social stigma and social understanding that men are abusers and women are victims. And so there's a lot more funding that goes to female victims. And I think it would kind of disrupt a lot of that if we were to say, yeah, in fact, actually, there's a lot of men that are victims, and women are abusive. I was talking to a coworker the other day. We were talking about a gal she knows that she's pretty sure has Munchausen, and I told her, I said, well, isn't it so interesting that men, if they were to do that, would be diagnosed as antisocial personality disorder, or a sociopath, same thing, whereas women are given a syndrome, right? And again, it's this whole idea that a mother or a woman can't be violent or abusive, especially to her children, whereas men can. So there's this huge double standard when it comes to perception of crime and perception of things like that. So, okay, let's see. Sue says, hey, Dana, can somebody fall in love with someone who wasn't a narcissist, but I fell in love with an illusion, something they were not? Because oh, sure, yeah. I think, and I don't know kind of exactly what you're talking about as far as illusion goes, but, the first, really few weeks for sure, but really like the first 90 days or so that, that we know, or that we're getting to know a person, this is how the human brain works. So our brain fills in the gaps with information, okay, with kind of what we want to see. So if we're making these assumptions, right? So if we meet somebody and they're a teacher, and if they're, we'll just stick with that. Let's say they're a teacher, and they have a dog, and they are a vegetarian. We're going to have certain assumptions about them, right? So we might think, well, they're a teacher, they're really great with kids, they're a vegetarian, they're really compassionate, they have a dog, they must love animals. Well, that's our assumption, that's our narrative that we're telling ourselves. That none of that might be true at all, right? So they might actually hate children, but they were the closest to a teaching degree in college, and that's why they got that degree, or they got it because their father wanted them to get it, or they got it because they liked to be in control of children because they hate them so much, or maybe they're a vegetarian because they just they're allergic to red meat or something, or they're they have an iron overage in their body and they can't eat meat, right? So our brain fills in the gaps. So yes, long story short, it's very common for our brain to create this idea of who other people are. And then that's when we notice, because we talk about, oh, well, this person changed. Like, you hear that a lot, right? It's like, oh, this person changed in a relationship. Well, actually, they probably really didn't. Especially if they're not a narcissist. Like, if they're not manipulative, the person didn't change. Now we're just seeing them accurately because we're getting to know them more for who they really are. So we're seeing their true colors. And that just takes time for anybody to see that. Okay, Little Britches, that's cute, asked, is it healthy to move away, to completely leave your hometown to escape? It's too hard to see them everywhere. I can't cope on a daily basis seeing her randomly. I think that you need to do what you need to do, and it's totally okay if you feel that you just want a fresh start and you don't want that constant reminder. I moved away. Now, granted, I kind of had to, because I had a rental property that I was paying for that was in another city that a tenant had trashed, and I couldn't afford to live where I was living. But even if I could have afforded two places at the time, I wouldn't have. I would have moved out of town because it was very traumatic for me to see Jack's car, or to run into him, the thought of running into him around town. Here's the thing, though. if you do move to another city, you know, uh, really, it's really important that you make sure that you have a support system lined up, because while you're kind of, giving yourself breathing room from one problem, then there's going to be other problems that surface, right? And so it's it can be very lonely, it can be very sad, it can be very isolating moving to a strange town if you don't know anybody. So definitely kind of a plan in place when you're thinking about moving. So Peace Pom Pom is here. Lauren is here. M. Fisher is here. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, S9, you bring up a really great point. She says, or he says, said, I'm not sure which gender you are. I made a chart of the red flags and started coordinating my relationships with them. All of the longer term ones had a bunch of red flags in one way or another. It blew my mind. I'm so glad that you did that. And I love that you did that. And so here's another exercise that you can do. Okay. So go back through, write out maybe like every significant friendship and relationship that you've had since middle school. Okay. And write down three or so qualities about like what attracted you to that person. And then write down three qualities about the person that was like why that relationship or that friendship is no longer around. And then I want you to go back through and circle the ones that repeat. And I think you're going to find that to be very, very interesting. So if you're not familiar with my theory, I have a theory called, it's the empty buckets theory, okay? And so the theory goes that we are all born into this life with three different buckets, okay? We have the bucket of safety, which is our physical needs. We have the bucket of significance, which is our emotional needs. And then we have the bucket of stability, just kind of the reassurance that the other two buckets are going to continue to be filled, okay? And our parents are the ones that originally fill these buckets. But then later on in life, as we get older, they get filled by our friends and our religion and our extended family and our jobs. And there's lots of different ways that they get filled. If we have a bucket that starts low, right? So maybe, you know, our parents, so I give the example in my life. My parents worked a lot. They had their own business. They were never home. And I internalized that as a child, and I felt really unloved and unimportant. Okay. So I had the empty bucket of significance in my life, specifically the feeling unloved and feeling unimportant. Because I had those kind of two sub buckets, I and when a bucket runs low, that's when it becomes a vulnerability. Okay. So oh, thank you. S9 is Suzanne. Good to know. So when these buckets run low and they become a vulnerability, that's how manipulative people get into our lives. So because we attach to them, like we're attracted to them because they're filling our buckets, they're giving us something that we need. And so it's the same kind of thing. So like it's really hard to have good judgment if we're starved out in some way, right? So like it's hard to think clearly and have good judgment if we're going to go grocery shopping on an empty stomach. It's the same thing. It's hard to make good friendships and be in good relationships if we're starved out in that area. This is how people get into cults. This is how people get caught up with online dating scammers. This is how people get caught up with sociopaths and narcissists a lot of the time. And so it's worth looking back and thinking about, okay, what empty buckets do I have? So here's another example. I was talking to a guy 6 months ago, and he was saying his empty bucket was the bucket of stability. He grew up in a foster home. He was shuffled around a lot. He kind of never, his mother was an alcoholic. He never knew if he was going to be going to the same school or what have you. So he's had the same job for like 20 years. He hates it. He stays in bad relationships. He craves stability, so he stays put. That's his empty bucket. And so then the solution to that is, when you have an empty bucket, is to learn how to fill it in an empowering way. So for this guy, that had the empty bucket of stability, he can go about doing things like, well, awareness is like always step one, right? Like that's huge. So he, he could have a savings account. He could, you know, sign a year lease in places. He could start identifying in what ways was he feeling unstable in his life, and like what would make him feel better. So, and then for me, feeling unloved and unimportant, it helps me to go, because it's none of this is all in our brain. Like it may not even be reality, right? But it's one of those things, like, it's weird. When we're children, we perceive things a certain way, and then they just become truths to us. And so it's important that we kind of re-examine our beliefs every so often to make sure that they are valid and that they are empowering and that they do make sense, right? But if you can, so for me, it helps. Like I do a lot of meetup events. I spend a lot of time with friends. I connect and reach out with people through YouTube, through my website, and through like lots of different ways. So that helps to fill up my buckets. It's a healthy way, right? So like an unhealthy way people tend to get their buckets filled is like what narcs do, because that's why narcs really do what they do, is they're trying to get those empty buckets filled as well. But instead of getting them filled in a healthy way, they're taking, right? So they're sleeping around, they're stealing money, they're lying, they're doing all of these things that make them feel significant. But it's destructive behavior. It's destructive to other people and it's destructive to them. So Cecilia says, I described real love and love bombing like this to my therapist. Love bombing is sweet and low, and real love is like sugar. They're both sweet. Oh, I see. It's like sweet and low, and real love is like sugar. They're both sweet, but you can tell the difference. That's a really great analogy. Yes. And so like, and there's degrees of love bombing. So the more like extreme end of love bombing is kind of what you see on like online dating, where like right out of the gate, they're like, "Oh, my dearest love, your eyes are like rubies or emeralds, and your hair is like flowing water. My queen, I want you to," and it's just really flowery, poetic kind of language where they're just laying it on so thick. Pepper says her beliefs growing up were that she was stupid and worthless. She says, "Thanks, Mom." Sarcasm. Yeah. So it's really, yeah, right? Marie says, "Oh, Pepper, no, you're quite the opposite. I've had the opportunity to get to know you a little, and you're such a sensitive, loving, and smart soul." Yeah, it's so wild, what we tell ourselves, right? Like what messages we pick up and what messages we keep there. But it's so cool because once we bring that into awareness and we realize that we've been carrying this around, it's so much easier to then you have the choice. You're like, this does not serve me. Like this is garbage, and you can let it go. I think I talked about this a little bit in the last live stream, but if you guys haven't read the book or checked out her YouTube channel, I highly, 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 highly recommend it. Her name is Louise Hay, and the book is called You Can Heal Your Life. And so if you go, I just released my notes on the book today on my blog. So if you go there, if you kind of scroll down under like latest posts, you'll see them. And I take really extensive notes on all of the book club books. They're like 12 pages long. Fantastic book. And she's all about self-love and self-esteem and learning to love yourself and getting rid of guilt, getting rid of resentment, getting rid of anger. It's just a fantastic, fantastic book. I can't recommend it highly enough. And I think it really does. She has a ton of exercises in there that it's, like I cried probably half a dozen times reading the book. Yeah, see, Megan says she has the most amazing positive affirmations. She does. And she, on her YouTube channel, she's got a ton of affirmations. She has guided imagery. She's all about healing. So, like, her past was that she was a spiritual, I think, like an intuitive healer. And, and so, hold on, I need to get back. I need to freeze this chat here because I have a comment I need to respond to there. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Okay, let me respond to this and I'll go back because I can't stop the chat. Joan says, my therapist doesn't think cluster B personality types are worth talking about. He dismissed it when I asked him about it. So, did he dismiss getting into, because here's the thing, because a lot of therapists don't really feel the need to get into the differences between like narcissist and sociopath, but they might, because their focus might be more on behaviors and not labels. And in a way, there's a part of me that really does agree with that, because it's the behaviors that are important, the label's not important. And so because with the label, you can ask a dozen different mental health therapists or mental health professionals in general, and you can get, a dozen or so different labels for what you're experiencing, because diagnosing somebody with a personality disorder, even a mental illness, it's not an exact science, it's an art. And so because there's so much, because it's very kind of nebulous, and the criteria for meeting a personality disorder in many ways is very vague, a lot of therapists prefer to talk more about behaviors. However, and I get this because I was there too, initially, I think a lot of victims of abusive people like having the clarity of a label because it's validating. It's like, it helps to clarify in our mind of, okay, so this person is problematic. Like, it's not, we're not crazy is what it is. Like, we're not crazy. This is problematic. What we're experiencing is problematic. It's very validating. But so here's the bottom line. If you're feeling like you're not being heard, if you're feeling victimized or minimized by your therapist, then I'd get a different therapist. I told my therapist I didn't read the Periscope message fast enough. Sorry, can you retype that and I'll keep my peripheral vision open for it. Oh, Martine is here. Lauren is here. Okay. So my blog for now is called narcissistsupport.com. Oh, yeah. True Love says, ever think about childhood movies you grew up with watching where the pretty, sweet girl saves the broken man and proves to everyone that he's worthy? Maybe that was me, like Beauty and the Beast. I think a lot of people, men and women, they grow up with, it's a form of programming, like literally, right? Like they call it TV programming. Movies, media, this is what a lot of children, these are the messages that we're being indoctrinated with, right? So, with women, it's kind of more of this damsel in distress or this princess. Okay, let me get this comment real quick. I told my therapist that I wasn't depressed. I had been gaslighted for months. It was a big aha moment. He had me believe that I was crazy. Yes, they do that. They do that. Manipulative people do such a fantastic job of blaming all of their behavior on us. And I mean, and there's no shortage. I mean, they will often tell therapists, especially if they're going with you to joint therapy, that they might say, kind of faking concern, right? I'm just really concerned about her. She's just, or him, they're just really not themselves. And, and sometimes oftentimes I think the therapist gets roped into it. Yeah. You know, and it's not that the therapist is somehow like unqualified. It's that they're only seeing this person who's highly manipulative and putting their best face forward. They're only seeing them for like 50 minutes a stretch once every couple weeks. So they don't see an accurate picture of kind of what's going on. So it's really, really easy for a highly manipulative person to dupe a mental health professional. So yes, let me get back to the movie thing. So a lot of men, good, you're getting the correct help now. I love that. Love that. With men, this whole rescuing a damsel in distress is known as like the white knight syndrome. And so it's kind of the male version of codependency, where with women, you have the, well, my love, it's the same thing, right? Like, well, my love can save you, right? So the whole Beauty and the Beast syndrome, where he's absolutely horrible to her and she sticks around and she charms her, her love fixes him, literally, right? It changes, it transforms him into a wonderful man that she's always wanted. And that's a very toxic message. So if you look at a lot of the old fairy tales, they were very, very toxic, like on lots of different levels. So it's good for us to kind of question these messages. The whole thing with codependency, and this is what's so tricky about codependency, is because a lot of the characteristics of codependency, and when I say codependency, I'm talking about somebody who is basically overgiving, right? Very kind of poor, or at a minimum like weak boundaries, where they're accepting a lot of bad treatment. They're putting other people ahead of themselves, sometimes to the point where it's like they're sinking themselves to save somebody else. So a lot of characteristics with codependency are often, heralded as great qualities in our culture. So especially for women that are mothers, right? It's this idea that, yeah, here's another example. Snow White's stepmother was a narcissist because she was jealous, right? And to the nth degree, she wanted her killed. So yeah, it's a great example. Yes, true love, says the prince. That sunk straight into me. That was me, the rugged man who never got love. And then I tried to make up for it and save him, and I loved doing it. It backfired big time. I see, Megan says, I was totally codependent for far too long. I rebuke it now. Yes, I do too. And so, pretty much any romantic comedy has elements of super toxic relationships in it. And so, that's the thing. The weird thing too about getting healthy is, like, the vast majority of society, like normal people, like quote unquote normal people, they don't understand what we're doing. Like, well, like, they don't understand healthy boundaries because their whole idea is, well, you're a mother, so you're supposed to put yourself last. Like, that's what mothers do, right? You're supposed to run around kind of in raggedy clothes while your kids get the best of everything. You're supposed to go, this whole martyr syndrome, right? Like, you're sacrificing yourself to save others. You're, for well, women and men, it's this whole idea of commitment at all cost, right? Like, you just don't give up on your partner. You you just you stay together through thick and thin. That's what you do because that's what love is about, and that has nothing to do with love. There's people confuse commitment and codependency all of the time. And so that's the thing. The healthier you get and you start having boundaries, and you're like, and you start putting yourself first, people are going to be like, well, wow, you're selfish, right? Or it's this idea that now we're the problem because we're saying no and we're having healthy boundaries. It's it's really crazy making, because other people are just not going to understand, well, not other people, I should say. because I think we all kind of what we were talking about last time, a little bit about law of attraction stuff. You know, water always seeks its own level. So the healthier you get, in time, your outer circle is going to rise to that level. So, you're going to have friends that are going to level up with you, or you're going to get new friends. So it just takes time for that to kind of all even out. So I wanted to talk about this really quick. 'Cause we just touched on it just briefly at the end of the last live stream about law of attraction, and I think it might have been Cecilia mentioning law of attraction and child abuse. And so, how does it work when you have children, like that terrible things happen to children? And how does that kind of reconcile with law of attraction? And my, because I am a huge believer in law of attraction. However, I think, and I just wanted to be clear on this, I'm sorry we kind of left that hanging last week, is I think children, they have that vibration of pure love, pure goodness about them, right? And so they're kind of subjected to the kind of the vibrational frequency or energy of the environment around them. And so that's kind of how abuse happens. And that's how people look a blind eye. It has absolutely nothing to do with the child. It has nothing to do with the vibrational frequency of the child. It has nothing to do with, some sort of like past life or that the child somehow chose it. I don't believe that any of that's true. I think it's just you're around, children don't have power and control over their lives. They're in an environment that might be a certain vibrational frequency with certain vibrational people. And, it happens. And it's unfortunate and it's tragic, but it is not the child's fault. Ever, ever, ever. Let's see. Let me kind of scroll through. Martin, that's an interesting question. Martin says, what does it say about my narcissist when she will only watch reality crime shows? I don't know. That to me is kind of disturbing. When, especially if they're like murder shows, I think a lot of them, I think narcissists in general tend to like things that are highly emotional because it makes them feel more alive, because it evokes a strong emotion. So I think that's the attraction to, like real crime or like, whatever, forensic files, that kind of stuff, or the love bombing at the other end of it, right? So they only function in extremes and they're very impulsive. If your narcissist starts talking about you in terms of how he or she would plan a perfect murder, that she wishes you were dead, if she starts talking in terms of kind of what she's watching, then honestly, like I would be a little bit alarmed by that. So, kind of go with your gut. But my whole thing is, I, my whole thing is garbage in, garbage out. And so this is again kind of like law of attraction kind of stuff. What we feed our brain, all of that sits in our subconscious mind. And it's really, really important to be very particular about your environment, with your friends, with your job, with your house, with your car, with what you're watching on TV, with what you're listening to on the radio, all of that, because your subconscious soaks in all of that. And so if you're listening to this stuff that's incredibly traumatic and it's upsetting, even the news that's disturbing, it does affect us, but we don't often realize it affects us if we're so used to watching it. So, for example, when I went through my divorce, this was about 7 or so years ago, we were moving out of state. And so the movers came, they packed up everything. So I didn't have a TV for a long time. And our housing situation was in transit. I didn't have, I was kind of couch hopping, didn't have a TV. And the first couple of weeks were really, really hard. And then I literally felt like I was detoxing from it. This was really before it never even dawned on me to go onto YouTube at this time to even like watch anything. And once I detoxed from TV, then, and I haven't had a TV since. It's been like 7 years now. I have not had a TV. It's been fantastic. And so now when I go to the gym, because I'm very particular about what I listen to, what I watch on YouTube, and I mainly only watch super positive things because this, all of this stuff, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love you guys. This is heavy stuff, and I have a hard time, and I probably work on this stuff. I don't even know. I would say at a minimum, probably 6 to 10 hours a day. Like it's a lot. So, and it can just get very, very overwhelming. So I don't watch the news. I don't watch other channels really on narcissism unless it's somebody here, that wants me to check out their channel, and then I'm supporting them. Then I'll do that. But generally, I don't watch any of that because it's just like we all need our line. We all have our limit, right? But so okay, so now, so when I go to the gym and there's all these TVs on, I notice how affected I am. And so there is that crime TV, there is the news, there is keeping up with the Kardashians and all of it, and it's just so fascinating because it almost makes me physically ill with all of the garbage. So I think it's something that, I would encourage everybody, take a time out from TV and from the media, get to know yourself, get to pay attention to how do you feel? How do you feel when you're watching or not watching certain shows? Like I used to be a huge Law and Order fan, like huge. I just loved Law and Order. So it was me, a bottle of wine, and like an up, marathon of Law and Order. And you couldn't pay me to do that now because it's just I know how I feel with it. So so pay attention to your environment, is what I'm saying. And then here's the weird thing too. So with environment is so obviously like TV and radio is a lot more obvious, right? That would impact us. But paying attention to other things like the lighting in your home, the feel of your sheets on your bed, kind of the, I don't know, the soap that you use, the every single elements in all of these different elements in your environment, paying attention to how you feel, and then examining like what needs to change. Maybe it would be moving the furniture around in your house. So this is another thing, okay? With you know the environment. So let's see. Okay, so I just got a question. Does it hold me back from talking about hold me back from healing? Was that your question? Can you post that again? I cannot read these Periscope questions fast enough. With your environment, once you start paying attention to how you feel, you're not going to want to feel bad. Okay. Oh, she said, I think when I recover, I never want to talk about narcissists. I don't blame you. And I did struggle with that when I first started my blog. So when I first started my blog, it's been about a year now. It'll be a year in April. Hold on. I was doing it more for me, and I didn't really think that anybody would find it. I didn't think anything of it. And then I had a friend of mine who had said, you know, she's like, I really think that you should start a podcast. Well, I didn't know how to start a podcast, so I thought, well, I'll start a YouTube channel instead. Because I had been, before I went through all this crap in my life, I had been an advocate at a domestic violence shelter. And so I've always had a huge, strong interest in advocacy and in domestic violence. It's always just been a burning passion of mine. And so, and before, so I'm a nurse now, okay? I was an advocate before, and then before that, I was a teacher. And so, kind of all of those elements combined are things that I really, really, really enjoy. So, I, when I started, so the reason I started my YouTube channel was more from like an advocacy point of view. Advocacy combined with teaching, right? And I thought, well, if I can share my lessons learned and help somebody else prevent, help prevent them from kind of falling in the same hole that I fell into, then that's a good thing. And that's how it started. I didn't really know anything about YouTube, and I didn't know I didn't know a lot about a lot of this, and it's been quite the learning curve. There have been many, many, many days since I've started my channel that have been hard. It's been a huge learning, not only like technology wise, but like emotional wise. So I've had a lot of aha moments. I've had, a lot of hurt feelings. I've had a lot of personal growth come from this. But yeah, it can be hard, but it's kind of cool now because my channel's at the point where you know we're talking about other people's stories, which is good because then they get more of a wider range of the experience of abuse instead of just my story, instead of just my perspective. But yeah, it was really hard at first. It was what was the hardest was when I would get criticism of any kind. And I knew that there were going to be trolls. I knew people were going to say things, but that was really hard when people would criticize me. And I knew that going into it, but it's knowing it and like living it are two very different things. And so that was hard because it's like, dude, this is my life. Like, you think I'm just some sort of random person on YouTube. I am I'm being very open about everything that I went through in hopes of helping other people, and now you're criticizing me. I don't know. Like, I'm okay with it now. I'm used to it now, but that took a while to get. I mean, oh man, early on when I would get criticism like that, I would stew about it for days. Like, it just really, really bothered me. And there's been many, many days where, because my channel, everything took off like right away. It was really, really weird. And I didn't know that it was taking off at the time because I didn't have anything to compare it to. But I had a ton of people just emails were coming right and left, and it was just this avalanche. That was intense because it was to the point I couldn't, and I still can't respond to everybody, and that caused me a tremendous amount of anxiety. To the point, and like I said, there's been many, many days where I haven't even, like on weekends and stuff, when because I work full time, I wouldn't even get out of bed. Like, I was just really overwhelmed with all of it. So it's been, but knowing at the same time that this is what I want to do with my life. So realizing I need to level up. I need to learn how to handle this, handle these feelings, because this is what I want to do with my life. And so it's the whole kind of like, don't pray that it's easier, pray that you'll get stronger kind of a thing. And that's the direction that I've had in going. So what I find impressive, and I do worry about some of the people too. Let's see, nobody seems good enough. Keep comparing. Oh, you keep comparing men to your fake person and love bombing as far as dating and stuff goes. Let me get back to that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the people that are on tonight that started off their own YouTube channel, and that are fairly fresh out of these relationships, and they're talking about their experience, and I'm like really, really, really proud of them. And I just like, it makes my heart smile that I've inspired people to do that, and that they're doing it, and all that. But laundry's done. But I do worry about them and how fragile they might be, if they start getting a lot of the comments that I've gotten. So if you are thinking about planning, starting a YouTube channel on this topic, just know that it can be quite the emotional roller coaster. So, okay, so let's get back to your question. Your question was on, you're starting to date again and nobody comes close to this narcissistic partner that you had before. Um, so, a couple things with that. When our bucket, like I was talking about earlier, right? The three buckets that we all have. If your bucket of significance is low, right? So if you're feeling unloved, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling insignificant, if you're feeling unimportant, these kinds of feelings, love bombing feels so good. It's kind of it's the warm maple syrup on the pancakes of the soul. I mean, it feels so good. If your buckets are full, okay? And I should say, the fuller your buckets are, the less attractive that love bombing will be to you. So that's a mirage. That love bombing and in your level of attraction to it is a mirage. Sort of like, think about, you know, um, online dating scams, right? And so we read these articles where these people get caught up with these people, and they think, and they're going back and forth, and they've given them $100,000 of like their whole life savings, and they really think that this person's going to fly out and meet them. And to everybody else, it's really obvious that they're caught up in a scam, but they cannot admit it to themselves, and it's because they're so addicted to that love bombing. But to a person, they're addicted to that love bombing because that bucket is empty. So they're so lonely that they're willing to play along with this fantasy that they know deep down that this is not for real. They do. I fully believe that they do. They are just in such a heavy cloud of denial that they can't admit that to themselves. And so in order for us to make good choices with friends and with dating, it's really important that we make sure that we're getting our buckets filled, right? So once you start getting that bucket filled, you're not going to be attracted to the love bombing. And you're going to be attracted to very different types of people because you're not dating somebody out of loneliness. Like you're more focused on being choosy instead of being chosen. And so when we're lonely, right, it's the opposite. We're more focused on being chosen. We see like, oh, this guy is really cute and he's funny. I really hope he likes me. I'm gonna do whatever I can to make this relationship work because I think he could be the one. Right. And it's this like rushing of intimacy, and it's this level of intensity that it happens so quickly. Healthy people don't move that fast. Healthy people don't love bomb. Healthy people, don't, um, you know, commingle their lives with another person because they realize their value. They realize that everything is easy to get into and that it's a lot harder to get out of it. And so they move slow. um, they don't have sex right away. Okay. Ideally, the longer you can wait to have sex with somebody, the better off you are. I recommend at least 90 days. Yes, you heard me right. So 90 days, right? So going out with the person. And then even if you're waiting to have sex, for that long, at least wait a month, okay? At least wait a month. During that time when you're not having sex, to actually you're like interviewing this person, you're screening them to see if they're a match for your life. And so a lot of people, and they might not even be manipulative people. They might be really kind, good people, but if they're lonely too and they're looking to date, then it's easy, and I've been there, it's easy to find yourself now you're talking to this person for 3, 4, 6 hours a day, right? You're texting, you're talking to them, and very quickly we've made them our whole world. Even though they might not be a narcissist, right? They could be like a totally normal human being. But that level of intensity, why is my computer, hold on just a second here. Okay, there we go. That level of intensity, um, you know, that's not healthy. And so healthy people, they have their own life, they have hobbies, they have friends, they stay busy. So when they date, that other person is like icing on the cake. They're not the whole cake. And so that's another reason when these relationships with narcissists end, why we feel such a void in our life, because we've oftentimes made them, or we've been manipulated into making them our whole life. And that it's not healthy, and that it's can be really hard to move forward from. Um, so so yes, right now you're having a hard time, right? But this is all very new. Like you're fresh out of this relationship. um, right now I would encourage you to work on your boundaries, work on your self-esteem, get to the place where you have a solid life, right? That when you're dating, that person can be the icing on the cake, not the whole cake, and that you're bringing your highest and best self out there. So you can, again, this is the whole water seeks its own level thing, right? So, you know, so you're going to attract kind of the highest and best men or women out there, right? So, and not to say that you've got to get into like perfect shape, or have a certain amount of money in the bank. And I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about bringing your highest and best self forward as far as how you feel inside. And again, like this book that I keep recommending, there might even be a recorded copy of it on YouTube. I'm not sure. It's called "You Can Heal Your Life," and I highly, highly recommend doing it and going through the exercises, focusing on you, getting to the place where you love yourself, that you accept yourself, that you feel like you're a good catch, right? And that you're not feeling lonely and lost and vulnerable and sad, because it's that again that is not when you want to be dating. That's the emotional equivalent of having not eaten for like a month and then going to the grocery store, right? Or only eating 300 calories a day for a month and then going to the grocery store. You're not going to make good decisions, and you're not even going to realize that you're not making good decisions until you're further down the road and you realize that relationship's ended, and then you think to yourself, like, what on earth was I thinking? That person was not right for me at all. So let's see. I hope that helps. Yes, the book "You Can Heal Your Life." It's by Louise Hay. Oh, people are talking, I think, about sex and waiting to have sex. So, yes. Okay. Yes. Go to sleep now. I'm glad I could answer your question. This person's in England, so they're going to sign off. So lots of love to you. Take care. Be good to yourself, okay? You deserve it. So have a good night. So the whole thing with waiting before sex, this isn't for any religious reason. This isn't for this is not with me like slut shaming or any of this. The reason I recommend people wait is because there's a lot of chemicals, hormones that are released during sex. And so sex is a very bonding experience. Even if we don't think that we are bonding to that person, we are. We're releasing oxytocin, there's dopamine, there's, all kinds of bonding hormones that are taking place there. And so, especially for women. So we release a lot more oxytocin than men do. And oxytocin is one of the chemicals that's released in a mother's breast milk. For her, and it's what bonds a mother to her child. So very powerful stuff here. And if we're sleeping with somebody early on, especially if the sex is good, right? Then it creates this artificial premature bond that we think our brain is thinking that we're a lot more bonded and connected to this person than we probably really, no, not probably, than we really are, because we don't know them. And so it just takes time to actually know. It just, yeah. Cecilia says, it sounds pretty puritanical, Dana. I know. And but it's not, believe me, it's not for puritanical reasons. It's not for anything, you know, religious or kind of antiquated ideas about anything. It's from actually like, purely like from a scientific like bonding thing. That's why. It's just, to me, this goes back to maintaining our own power and control as much as possible, and making sure that we're seeing the situation accurately, that we're not seeing it through rose colored glasses, that we're able to actually think critically about it. And it's hard to think clearly and critically if we're in an emotional fog. That's my justification and my reason for waiting for sex. So interesting. Martin, I don't know. Martain, I don't know. He asks, do narcs release less oxytocin and do they bond less? How is that possible? Um, that's a fantastic question. I don't know if that's ever been studied, to be honest with you. My guess would be that they probably do. Their brains. So here's the thing, like with abuse, with trauma of any kind, it does cause like quote unquote brain damage. There are areas of the brain that are affected. So they've done brain scans on children, let's say for example, that have come from abusive homes, or that have even not even abuse, say spanking, right? The child's been spanked, or this child has been yelled at. There's brain changes that happen when a person is hit or when they're yelled at. And so, with a narcissist, I would imagine too, especially if they've grown up in really traumatic homes, that they probably have a lot of this altered brainwave activity going on. So, very, I don't know. I would be curious to know. Um, Yes, Ghost Hunter says waiting for sex is also a good way of knowing that the person likes you for you and not just getting in your pants. So, yes. Soul Astro says, "Hey Dana, my name is Dana too. My question is, I sent my ex narc some of your videos. Was that an error on my part?" No, not necessarily. I think, most narcissists don't realize that they're the problem, even within videos. And so, I have had, excuse me, a handful of them email me. And and they're like, I was watching your videos, or somebody recommended, I somehow came across your videos, and I see a lot of my behavior in them, and it scares me. Doesn't mean that they're necessary. I don't, I'm not diagnosing them, so I don't know if they're really a narcissist. I think a lot of codependent people tend to think that they're a narcissist, but because it's a lot of, there can be a lot of similar behavior there, but the intention that drives the behavior is what's different. So back on track here. So if a person truly is a narcissist and they watch videos on narcissism, you know, kind of, I think one of two things is going to happen. So one, they're either going to refine their game, which that is not good, but it just kind of is, it is what it is. Or they're going to have some sort of insight into, hey, I've got this problematic behavior. So, you know, but realistically, if you ever heard back from your ex, they'd probably argue with you, and they'd probably, because they really do spin it. They think that they are the victim of us, and there's just no introspection there. True Love says 1 month of no responses, no Hoover from him in 3 weeks. If I open the door again, I'm sure he'll say he loves me and even willing to move back in. I can't go back to him. It's still hard. So yeah, it is. But it's good that you know that, you know? And I think you just have to kind of embrace those uncomfortable feelings and just feel them, and then let them go and just practice letting them go. Because Awareness is, it's the first step of change. And so once you kind of realize that this person's playing a game with you, then, we're no longer manipulated, right? If we know what's going on, then we become a willing participant. So at that point, it's more on equal playing ground. So now if you know what's going on, then you can put a stop to it. It doesn't make it easy because again, that promises of love and the attention and the affection and all of that, it can be really hard to walk away from, especially if that empty bucket is running low, right? So you won't even be tempted by this person if you are avidly working on filling up that empty bucket. So spending time with friends, spending time with, with if you have children or with pets or family, these kinds of things. Ghost Hunter says, here's a question: 50 Shades of Grey. If Christian Grey was a real guy, would he be considered a narcissist? That is a great question. I don't know if I would necessarily consider him to be a narcissist. Abusive, yes. A narcissist, possibly. I mean, I only saw the first movie, so, and there's not a lot of character development. So, like, I don't know. I can't really say. But I did a video a while back, and it was called something, it was one of the Ask a Question show episodes, and it was on whether or not 50 Shades of Grey was abuse. And so I did a whole video on the differences between BDSM and abuse. So, my whole thing with BDSM is not abuse because it's a willing exchange of power and control. It's between two consenting adults. It's safe. It needs to be safe, sane, and consensual. If it's not those things, then it is abuse, and that's what made it abuse in that movie. Is it wasn't safe and it wasn't consensual, right? She didn't have enough of the information, and he was really kind of taking advantage of her naivety and kind of pushing her into uncomfortable situations. And I mean, it just, if you can find that video of mine, I list out all of my issues with that movie, and it was quite the list. Um, let's see. Okay, Jody says, Dana, I messaged his ex today. I have him blocked and got a notification that he called my number. I started shaking uncontrollably seeing his number. His ex must have called him, freaking out. So, probably. Okay, overcoming understanding is going to bed. Good night, my dear. We'll see you next week, hopefully, okay? So here's the thing. Outing a narcissist is a lot like kicking a bee's nest, okay? Meaning, you need to have a plan. So if you're going to kick a bee's nest, you don't want to do that and then be like, oh crap, now there's a swarm of angry bees around me, right? Because that's how narcissists act when they're outed. It's really important, and not even necessarily outing them. You know, basically getting back your power and control. So even going to leave an abusive relationship or going to leave a narcissist, if you're reclaiming your power and control, that's when the victim is at greatest chance of harm, is when they go to leave a relationship. So, they're also at great risk, right? When they out a narcissist. And so it's really, really important that we anticipate that as much as humanly possible. So, kind of what we think they're going to say, what we think we would say in response, how we're going to act, how, plan ahead for this, like physically and emotionally. So you're not caught off guard like this. So it doesn't ruin your day or the next few days. You know, and that's the thing. So trying to warn other people, they may or may not see it because it's his ex. his ex might be like, wow, yeah, she's really right on. Like this guy does, he is problematic, and this is what is going on. Or, you know, this is like the whole cognitive dissonance thing. So if a person is experiencing cognitive dissonance, which we experience that when one of our buckets is low, it's our way of justifying, minimizing, denying, blaming, deflecting things, right? In order to continue doing what we're doing. So if they still are kind of holding a flame for this person, then they're going to have going to be experiencing cognitive dissonance, and so you know they might not believe it. Just sort of like the new partner, people ask all the time, well, can I warn the new partner? Like, what would happen with that? It's like the new partner is experiencing cognitive dissonance, and if they're not, they are in that first probably 30 to 90 days of a new relationship, right? So you've got chemicals going wild. Everybody in that initial stage of a relationship thinks that this person's perfect. They have really met the one. And it takes a while for those chemicals to wear off to where we can see the situation clearly. So trying to warn somebody that this Prince Charming or Princess Charming is not what they think, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to think that you're this crazy, bitter, jaded ex. And all you can do is just kind of walk away from the situation because they're just not going to listen. Soul Astro says, Dana, you're correct about the bee's nest because now my home during the middle of a divorce is being sabotaged. My whole basement was flooded and other things keep going wrong. So, yeah, that's what they do. They're vengeful people. So, hold on a second here. My phone battery is dying. Okay. Let's see. Rebecca says, my husband cheated on me for 14 years of our 16 years, yet I'm insecure. I'm insecure and I'm crazy. Yes, I am. I don't trust him. Yet he keeps me by loving me and proving to me he's changed. I am so done. So that's okay. So Rebecca, this is oftentimes what they say. So they demand trust that they haven't earned. This is very, very common. It's the whole, yeah, well, yeah, I've cheated on you multiple times, but see, in their mind, their behavior is never their fault. It's your fault for something that you would have done, right, as a wife, or it was the other woman's fault because she threw herself at him, or it was stress at work, or he was drinking again, or the voices told him to. There's no shortage of uh, justifications and lies that they will tell a person to keep them on the hook. And then what's even more hurtful is because then they do spin it around. And what you're describing, that is crazy making, because it's this whole idea. Because, if you're finding, if he's coming home late, if he's, has another phone, if he's got a Facebook account, if he's hiding his phone, doing suspicious things, right? Especially given his past behavior, you aren't insecure, right? A normal, reasonable, rational person would have a problem with that behavior. But in their mind, they feel very entitled to do whatever they want to do. And so, and they don't feel like they owe anybody an explanation. So it's just this constant stream of nonsense and lies that come out of their mouth. Because a healthy relationship, the person would be, especially if they've had a pattern of cheating, even cheating once, they realize they messed up, they broke trust in this relationship and in their partner. Now they have to go to probably some pretty great lengths in order to repair the damage that's been done to the relationship, which oftentimes means living a life of total open and honest and transparency until the other person has gotten that trust back. So, normal people understand this. Narcissists, other manipulative people don't. And they don't want, it's not that they can eventually understand this, it's because they're going to continue to keep doing whatever it is that they can do because they feel entitled to do it. So if your needs in your marriage aren't getting met, and And if you're feeling that he's not hearing you, he's not respecting you, he's not doing anything to make you feel trust and connection and providing a safe space for your relationship should be a safe space. If you can't feel that you're communicating effectively, if it's not a safe space, then that's problematic behavior, right? Even if he isn't cheating, like that alone is very problematic behavior. Um, oh, interesting. Dana, the police found a rock in my pipe wrapped in cloth, says Soul Astro, the one with the flooded basement. I believe it. They're very, you know, unscrupulous people. Lauren says, my narc was very protective of his phone and always deleted all of his texts immediately. I think a lot of them do that. And they do that, right? Because that's not normal behavior. They do that because they're getting texts that they need to delete right away. And then because they can't just like selectively delete certain texts, right? So then they come up with this nonsense of, well, I always clear my browser history every hour on the hour, or I always delete all of my texts off my phone. I just need to do that. And it's like, no, normal people don't obsessively do those things unless they're trying to hide something. Like normal, people that aren't people that have nothing to hide nothing. Kind of in a nutshell. So if you're feeling that something's off, it's because something's off. Kind of bottom line. Um, yes, Doug mentions if your house is being messed with, if you can afford it, get security cameras to protect it. So you can get security cameras at like sporting goods stores usually. So they have motion sensor ones that are for like deer, like game hunting, that you can put around your property, and they're very incognito, so it's not like a light comes on that they won't see them, because you don't want to put a camera where they can see it, right? Because then they're going to smash the camera, then they're going to take the camera. So you want to hide it someplace by your front door, your back door, maybe some windows, and then the camera will click on and record once it senses movement. So used and abused, says Dana, I have been so ganged up on. How do I know it's not me? Well, I don't know about your situation. Um, Here's the thing. Most people with problematic behavior don't care that they have problematic behavior. And so they never really stop to ask, I wonder if I'm the problem. Like they don't care, because they feel justified in acting the way that they're acting. They feel entitled to act the way that they're acting. And so, you know, I would encourage you to ask yourself, if you had problematic behavior, would you be willing to work on it? And if the answer is yes, then I wouldn't worry about it. It's probably not you. But the whole ganging up on somebody, there's a term out there that's called flying monkeys. And this is when you've got a highly manipulative person that spins the situation. They make themselves the victim of everybody else, right? Of their victim. They make themselves the victim. And they get other people, coworkers, friends, family, your friends, your family on their side. And then they spin it, and then all of these other people become flying monkeys, and then they start attacking the real victim, right? So the whole feeling of being ganged up on is very accurate, because it does happen. It's more normal than not. So that's weird. Annie says, I lived with my narcissist for 2 years. I have never seen his ID. He used to hide it before he went to bed. Yeah, huge red flag, right? Again, like normal people don't do things like that. And so that's kind of a good baseline to determine, to cut through that cognitive dissonance, to see if what you're experiencing is problematic or not. Soul Astro says, Dana, do you have any information on how two narcissists are together as a couple? I am almost certain that his new young woman is also a narcissist. Well, they use and abuse each other, that just the same. It depends on what they're after, right? So like if he's, if they're both emotion, again, like water seeks its own level. So, and when I say that, let me just clarify this really quickly. So when I say water seeks its own level, I don't mean that we're narcissists, right? What I mean is narcissists and people that have issues with codependency, right? We tend to date people that have another empty bucket at about the same level of ours. Okay, so for example, my situation with Steve, I had a low bucket on feeling, I felt unloved and unimportant. Well, I think he had actually the very same bucket, except his was lower. It took me a while to see because narcissist buckets are always lower. That's why these relationships don't last, right? So, he liked the fact that I just thought so highly of him, and that I made him feel very loved and very important, right? And so he was really craving that. Well, he made me feel very much the same way. And then down the road, I realized all of the lies and the deceit, and that he wasn't who I thought he was. So it doesn't make me a narcissist. It doesn't make him codependent. It means that people, like the whole water seeks its own level, people tend to date according to the same level of dysfunction or function in their life. So healthy people with buckets that are full, really, not even healthy, people that have buckets that are full tend to date people based off of the same level of functionality in their life. People that have empty buckets tend to date off of the same level of dysfunction. Sort of like if you've got two alcoholics that are dating, right? They have the commonality of being an alcoholic, but if one alcoholic is a binge drinker and they drink 20 or 30 drinks on a Saturday night, and the other alcoholic is the kind of alcoholic who drinks every single night, they're two very different types of alcoholics. That relationship probably won't work. Or if you've got an alcoholic who's very much a social drinker and an alcoholic who's very much a private drinker, they're two different, even though they're an alcoholic, they're two very different types of alcoholics. That might not work because they're not compatible. But people, so like, heroin addicts tend to date other heroin addicts. You know, but it's kind of like the level of dysfunction or the level of function. People tend to date other people that make about the same amount of money as they do, or that are about the same level of education as they are, or that are similar in age. So that's part of like a human kind of bonding thing. Is human beings, we all mirror each other. It's how we bond. So there's a certain level of that's very normal. So you can see if something's off if you've got two people that have very little in common. I have two family members that come to mind that I won't say who, but a relative of mine had said, had described them. She said, you know what? They go together like peanut butter and mayonnaise. And that was very, very accurate because they really do. And they have nothing in common. They have nothing in common. They're two polar opposite people. They're not in love. They connected because she needed to be taken care of, and he also needed to be taken care of in another way. So, she needed to be taken care of financially. He needed to be taken care of emotionally, and that was what bonded them. That is not enough to base a marriage off of, right? But that's how people tend to kind of partner up. So two narcissists, yeah, they can be in a relationship together. I've actually, one couple for sure comes to mind that they were both like big time sociopaths and they were married. So, it does happen, But yeah, I mean, I can't even fathom like what the behind the scenes, like behind closed doors would be. I'm sure it's a lot of just lies and manipulations that never end. So, okay. Believe in Love is here. Simone is here. Cece's Revenge is here. Adrian's here. Oh, and my computer is needs to be plugged in. Hold on a second. Okay. I need to get a power strip. I'm like swapping out my chargers here. Um Okay, True Love says, Dana, when you say water seeks its own level, I get doubtful as my ex covert narc had a learning disability and left me for a woman who is the same way and gets government assistance. So, okay, but again, right? So, like, that goes back to they're dating, or at least he's targeting her for some source of supply, right? They're not dating based off of anything that's functional or healthy. He's dating, you know, if he's dating her for money, it's because he doesn't have money, right? Like he's targeting her for supply. Um, so his bucket might on money on stability might be a little bit low. Her bucket on self esteem is gonna if that relationship's going to last, it's gonna be about the same level of low, right? And so that's what I mean when I say that they line up. Their buckets are emptied. It can be different buckets, but about the same degree. If his bucket is way emptier, right? If he's a covert narcissist and he's destructive and he's abusive and he's dangerous and all these things, if his bucket is really low and her bucket's only this low, then that relationship's not going to work. As soon as she starts seeing that problematic behavior, she's probably going to get rid of him because she's thinking more clearly. And again, too, it's going to depend on her perception, her boundaries and her perception of the situation. But generally relationships where one person's really unhealthy and a person's healthy, that doesn't last, right? It doesn't work. So okay, used and abused says, guys, I have been such a mess lately. It gets better, right? And yes, it does. It does. It does. So just know that it really does. And um, you know, you just got to give it time. I would encourage you to join support groups. I have one on Facebook. If you're okay with joining a Facebook group, it's closed, which means that your other friend, if you are on Facebook, it means your other friends on Facebook can they can see that you're in the group, but they can't see what you're posting. So there's a lot of different like narcissist support type groups on Facebook. My group is called Healing After Narcissistic Abuse, I think is what it's called. And I think it says on there like from YouTube. So support groups are huge, 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 huge. I wish I would have discovered support groups way back when. It would have really helped me tremendously. Okay, Lori says, hi, Dana. I would love your insight on this, on how I should deal with it. So, okay, go for it. If you asked your question earlier, I didn't see it. So if you could re-ask it, and I will keep my eyes open for it. Okay, S9 says, Dana, could you please say where your blog is? My blog is www.narcissistsupport.com. And I'm now also on Instagram. So my name there is also narcissist_support. Oh, I'm sorry. Center Within said, what just happened? Center Within says, I feel weirdly invisible here. I've asked 3 questions and none of them have been responded to. I tend to not belong in groups well, being the scapegoat. I guess I'm having a low evening. Oh, I am so sorry. No, it's not you. It's the chat scrolls really fast and I cannot read and think at the same time. So it's not you, it's me. Ask your question again and I will keep my eyes open for it, okay? So, so let me scroll up real quick. Soul Astro is saying, I'm very happy I found your channel. It took me 22 years to find this. I am so glad that you did. I'm glad. And I'm glad that we can help. Dana, Be Real says, Dana, I would love to hear examples of what people know is missing in the bucket and how to fill it with real life examples. So, hold on. This chat is really difficult. Lori says, I sent my message, but I'm not sure if you have seen it. No, Lori, I haven't seen it. Can you resend it again? I'm so sorry. It's this thing goes really fast, and if I look down, it's okay. Ben says I'm gonna make one last ditch effort to try to get to her. Her and her narc boyfriend had a baby, and this asshole is actually yelling at a 1 month baby. Ugh, I hate hearing stuff like that. It's not surprising because that's a lot of what they do. They don't care. Like it's all about them. That's frustrating. If you feel like this child is in a bad environment, which it sounds like it is because he's yelling, you can always call Child Protective Services. You don't need to, you know for certain anything's going on. Anybody can call Child Protective Services. Their job is to get out there and investigate for themselves. So that's all any of us can do when we come across upsetting or problematic situations like that. And I think it's important for us to be an advocate for those that don't have a voice. So, especially children, right? Because other people, a lot of people, when it comes to calling Child Protective Services, and you can do it anonymously, is this idea of, well, I don't want to split up a family or I don't want to get them in trouble or what if this stuff isn't really going on? And, if nothing's going on, then nothing's going on. But at least you've called and at least that ball is in motion and that they can go out and investigate. It's not our job to try to figure out what's going on. That's their job. And hopefully they can, you know, advocate for kids. So back to the question of hearing examples of what people know is missing in the bucket. So like I'd mentioned before, there's three buckets, right? The bucket of safety, the bucket of significance, the bucket of stability. The bucket of safety involves kind of, general like food, clothing, shelter, transportation. The bucket of significance involves love, understanding, importance, self-esteem, these kinds of things. And the bucket of stability is the reassurance that it's going to continue on. So, there's healthy ways to get the buckets filled and there's unhealthy ways to get the buckets filled. So, for let's say for the bucket of significance, right? For love, a lot of people mistake sex with love. And so they're hungry for love, but instead they become very promiscuous and they begin sleeping around and putting themselves in dangerous situations in order to get that bucket filled. So, a healthy way to fill that love bucket would be to spend time with animals, spend time with children, spend time with friends, family, empowering people where you can get that feeling of love and attention and affection in positive, empowering ways instead of destructive ways. Okay, I'm going to scroll down here and see. Oh, this chat scroll thing is not friendly to me. So people are talking about different support groups on here. I always encourage people join a few, and there are a lot on Facebook. Okay, there's no shortage of them. Join a handful, and you don't have to participate right away. And you can see which ones resonate best with you, because different people are going to fit in different groups differently, right? So just I would join a handful, and then just go from there. And then the one that the ones that you don't feel comfortable in, you just don't participate in, or you leave them. So, okay. Oh gosh, where I'm looking for the question. Where did the question go? There were two different people in here. One person is feeling ignored, which makes me so sad because I don't mean to ignore you and you are valuable. And I want you to have the answer to your question. So, and I don't see that you've reposted it. So, okay, I'm going to answer some other ones for the time being. T. Brown says, Dana, one of the things I've noticed is that we beat ourselves up throughout the process because we feel like if we go back, we break contact or whatever. Encourage those of us wherever they are in the process. It's really hard for us that they're if that it's really hard for us that are trying. So leaving a situation like this is not easy, right? It's not easy. On average, people leave an abusive relationship 7 times before they leave for good, right? So it's not easy. And again, the reason it's not easy is in large part due to the whole empty buckets thing. And so this is just one piece of the puzzle. So if we're feeling very, you know, unloved or unimportant or fear based, right? If we're thinking if we left them, we'd have no money, we'd have no housing, we'd have no transportation, we'd have these kinds of things. It makes it really really hard to leave a situation when it's meeting some of a person's needs. So the way around that, the way it makes it easier to leave and to stay gone, is to fill those needs yourself. So making sure that you have an account, right? Your own bank account, making sure that you've got some sort of idea for housing. Where could you stay? At a friend's house, a family's house? Could there be people at a church that could give funds to provide a place? Could a local domestic violence shelter? Getting some sort of plan in place helps. And so you can get a plan, like a physical plan, like what I'm talking about, right? So like where food, clothing, shelter, getting your basic safety needs met, but then also getting a plan for your emotional needs. So it's a breakup. And those are always painful, no matter how big of a jerk the person is. So thinking to yourself, how am I going to handle this when I miss this person? What am I going to do? How am I going to ride that wave? Because it's hard. There's this whole detox period, right? Where we feel sad, we feel lonely, nostalgia kicks in. We wonder if it's us. We wonder if we could have tried harder. We wonder if we should give them a second chance. All of that's normal. It's normal to feel that way. It's especially normal if you've been with a manipulative person who's been blaming you for all their behavior, right? So it's a very confusing situation. And where we kind of wonder, like, is everything in this relationship our fault? And maybe we need to get better, right? So I would encourage journaling, keeping I encourage people to make what I call a for when you miss him or her list. So writing down exactly what they've done, as to writing down reasons as to why you're leaving. So when you do have those low moments, right, and nostalgia does kick in and you start wondering and asking yourself, well, maybe things could work, and maybe if they got into therapy or if they got into rehab or if they found God or if they given enough time or love or what have you, that they could change. That you go back and you read your list and you get, because that'll clear the fog of cognitive dissonance real quick, reading that list, and you're like, oh right, that's why I have to leave. And then support groups are huge for this, right? Again, tons of them on Facebook. Mine is called Healing After Narcissistic Abuse. Um, but getting in support groups, talking to people, and then anticipating that you're going to feel like you have the emotional flu, and trying to ride this out as best as possible. Spending time with friends, watching funny movies, keeping yourself really, really busy. Just taking as good of care of yourself as possible. So I hope that answers that question. Cindy says, Dana, I have been gone and my phone is gonna die. Hold on a second. Okay. I will have a power strip for next time. um, let's see. Cindy says, I have been gone for over a year. My healing, I'm doing just fine. Why is this person coming into my mind? I'm having odd dreams. I'm going to bed and I'm waking up thinking about him. So, our body talks to us in emotions, and dreams are about that. So, generally, especially if we're missing or missing something that's not good for us, we're not missing them, we're missing the feeling that we had. So, if you're thinking about, especially if you're thinking about the good times, you're missing those kinds of feelings. So then the solution is to find ways that you can get those kinds of feelings again, right? So if you're feeling like, oh, this person made me feel like we had a great sense of connection, we had companionship, we had fun, then go find connection, companionship, and fun in a healthy way. That's kind of your body's signal to say, hey, this bucket, because that's what it is, that bucket's running a little bit low. We need to take action and get this filled up. So I'm a big believer that there are no such thing as negative emotions. All of our emotions work for us. Okay. And they all are designed to give us messages as to kind of what's going on with ourselves. So we have pleasant emotions and then we have unpleasant emotions, but they aren't negative. They're just warning signs designed to get our attention that we need to take some sort of different course of action. So if you're experiencing, depression, anxiety, frustration, irritation, all of these things, it's our brain's way of saying, hey, you need to change your approach, you need to get out of the situation, something's got to change. So this is not good for you, right? And so if we're experiencing, like, if, and I'm guessing this is what's going on through your dream, if you're experiencing pleasant emotions from an unpleasant person or situation, your body's trying to tell you, we want to feel this way again. Let's go find ways for us to feel this way again. And once you start feeling that way again, my guess is that those dreams are going to subside. Okay, scrolling down. Um, okay, Believe in Love says, Danny, there's a lady named Lisa who did a video to show children so they can know what we're dealing with. It was so sweet, and it also made me cry that it was us she was referring to. Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of making videos for kids. I might consider doing something like that. Um, Ben says, I'm considering CPS, but my whole family is against me. But I care too much about children. And if it gets bad, I will call. Thank you. So, again, you can call anonymously. Keep in mind, too, that abuse normally happens in isolation. So, what you're seeing is definitely not as bad as it's gonna get, that it gets. So if a person is showing outrageous behavior in public, if they don't even have the sense to to hide their bad behavior, believe me, behind closed doors, it's so much worse. So I'm a big fan of erring on the side of caution, letting CPS sort it out. So, okay, let's see if I can find those questions. Let's see. Okay, center within. I was feeling ignored. I never expressed my needs. It was big for me to do so here. I feel better now after Jones Rising reached out. So, center within. You are important. And it is 100% me and my inability to scroll. Oh, gosh. The scroll thing for the chat is really, really sensitive. And so when I touch it, it like bounces all over the place, and it's not user friendly. Oh, Lori says that she sent her question via Instagram. Okay, I will answer it via Instagram tomorrow. How about that? Jones Rising says, Dana, can you please explain cognitive dissonance again? Yes, I can. So, hold on, I want to just. I don't know why I can't find. Let me just scroll up. I want to. Okay. Center within. I want to address this real quick, and then we'll go to the cognitive dissonance one. Center within says the thing is, I seriously cannot bond with humans. Between getting triggered and now being able to see what they're up to, it's been 20 years since I've had a healthy friendship. You know, it's hard. It's hard because once you've been abused, we're all a little gun shy with people, and it is hard to connect the way we used to, right? And and it is hard, and it does take time. I would encourage you to bond in ways that you can bond. I would also really, really encourage you to read this book, or at a minimum, to check out her YouTube channel. It's by Louise Hay, Hay. The book is called You Can Heal Your Life. And she has a ton of affirmations, and it's all about like self healing. Okay. And like, kind of, it just a lot of really grounding stuff that I think will help to dissolve a lot of kind of what you're talking about. Connecting with animals is also incredibly therapeutic. And then just realizing too, if you've been abused, it's not your fault. And, it, you know, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And yes, there's a lot of really crappy people out in the world, but there's a lot of really good people out there too. And it just sometimes takes a little bit of time to find them, but they really are out there. And I don't know if you've ever gone to any like codependency anonymous groups. They're called CODA, CODA. Yeah, I think a lot of us tend to kind of find a lot of our people in those types of groups because they tend to be, kind, considerate, compassionate people that have also generally experienced abuse. So, just know that you're not alone in that. Lots of people tend to do things that keep other people out because they're tired of getting hurt. So, I'm sorry that you're going through this, and I'm sorry that you were feeling ignored tonight. It was definitely not intentional. So, lots of love to you. Just know that, okay? Okay, so Jones Rising was asking about cognitive dissonance. So, cognitive dissonance is a term, super fascinating term, and it's absolutely life changing if if a person fully understands it. So, cognitive dissonance is basically the mental distress that we experience. Oh, good. Okay, sorry, real quick. Center Within says, I will check out the book, YouTube, and I'm planning to go to a CODA meeting next week. I feel so assured. Oh, that's exciting. I love that. I love that. I think you're gonna like it. And there's lots of them online. There and again, the different support groups that are out there. Again, my support group is on Facebook. It's called Healing After Narcissistic Abuse. And there's lots of really fantastic people there as well that can relate. And I think that's a lot of what we struggle with that have been abused is that we feel very alone in that and that nobody else can really relate to what we went through. So it's, you know, it's just connecting with other people that get you is what it is. Oh, that's nice, Martain. He said, sometimes the way Dana says things to people almost makes me cry. I'm serious here. That's really, that's awesome. So thank you for that. So, okay, back to the cognitive dissonance thing. So, cognitive dissonance, it's the mental distress that we feel when our thoughts and actions don't line up. So, people, human beings, we need our thoughts and actions to line up because if they don't, then we're kind of being pulled in two different directions, right? We all experience cognitive dissonance. General, I mean, probably on a daily basis. It's not just something that's reserved for people that go through abuse. It's if we're trying to lose weight and our thoughts are that we want to lose 10 pounds, but our actions are to go eat ice cream, something's got to give, right? Because that thought and that action doesn't line up. So the way that our brain resolves the distress between a thought and action that doesn't line up is generally to justify, minimize, deflect, deny, or blame. So if I'm on a diet, I'm trying to lose 10 pounds, and I'm going to go eat ice cream, I might tell myself, well, it's okay because tomorrow I'm going to go to the gym and I'll run an extra mile, right? Or, well, ice cream's not that bad. I mean, it is, it's sorbet. It's not really even ice cream. It's sorbet, and I'm gonna get the smallest size. So therefore, that's okay. So now I've been able to resolve that cognitive dissonance. Right? I'm no longer in distress because now my thoughts and my actions line up. I've convinced myself that eating this small amount of sorbet is not going to knock me off of my diet. Right? It's the same thing to a much larger extent with relationships. So, in a relationship, in any like Maury Povich show or Jerry Springer episode is a great example of this. So you have people, right, that have their partner, and then this their partner comes on and they're doing all kinds of stuff. They're lying, they're cheating. They've got 10 kids by 10 different people. They've it's just this whole pattern of mayhem and foolishness going on. And so, but their wife or their husband is staying with them, and so it doesn't make oh, my battery's dying. Hold on. So to the audience, right? To the audience, everybody is thinking, "What are you doing? This person's a loser. They're a liar. They're a cheater. They're trouble. Like you need to get out of there." But the reason the person is staying is because they've justified their behavior. And so in their mind, they're buying all of the manipulations. They're buying all of the excuses of that the other person threw themselves at them, or that their partner cheated because they'd gained too much weight, or they'd lost too much weight, or they dressed too sexy, or they didn't dress sexy enough, or they made too much money, or they didn't make enough money. They believe any excuse that they throw them because in their mind they want to stay in that relationship. Okay? And so, in order to stay in that relationship, and especially if their other thought is that they want to, that they want to be married and that they don't want to be married to a cheater, then they're going to have to justify that cheating. And so our brain is very creative. It comes up with tons of different ways to justify our behavior, right? And so it's really common. And of course, narcissists and other manipulative people just run with this. And one of the common things that they would say is, okay, so S9 says, Dana, would me finding excuses for my husband's behavior be considered a cognitive dissonance? Yes. So anytime we justify, we minimize, we deny, we deflect, we blame either our behavior or somebody else's behavior. Well, generally both, right? So we're justifying our behavior and we're justifying somebody else's behavior. It's because we're experiencing cognitive dissonance. And so when people talk about being in a fog and they're being confused, right? When we're experiencing confusing behavior, which is generally the very first sign of abusive behavior, is confusion. When we're experiencing confusion, that's the first warning sign of cognitive dissonance. And so it's that fog of cognitive dissonance because it's literally an emotional fog, right? So we've attached ourselves to this person or this belief or this idea because it's filling a need for us, right? So if I'm really lonely and I'm going to get into this relationship with this person who I think is absolutely Prince Charming, he's just laying it on so thick and he's telling me everything I want to hear. Again, you see this with online scams, right? Where you have an older widow, for example. But I mean, it happens to people of all ages. But let's say you have an older widow and she's been single for 30 years. And this young stud chats her up and he's just telling her everything she wants to hear. She hasn't felt that way probably in a very long time. So she's just drinking it up. And, you know, so all of her quote unquote common sense, all of her good judgment has now gone out the window because again, when we're vulnerable like that, right? So when a bucket is so low, we're not thinking clearly. This has nothing to do with our IQ, our level of education, anything. It has everything to do with it's when we're vulnerable, when that bucket's low, it is next to impossible to think clearly. It's the exact same thing, like I was saying, of being starved out and then going grocery shopping. Like you're just not going to make good decisions, right? So, but you think you are. That's the thing. Like you think you are, and then you get home and you realize I didn't even buy food. I bought just a bunch of crap or a bunch of like things that don't even go together because you're shopping based off of cravings. You're not shopping based off of like a strategy or a plan, right? So, yeah, cognitive dissonance is really, really tricky. It goes away if you get those buckets filled. So pay attention to the words that you're using. If you're finding yourself justifying behavior that you would be upset about, especially if you had one of your children or a friend tell you that they were experiencing this in their relationship, and if you would be upset about it, then that is a sign that you probably should not be in that relationship, that you're justifying behavior. Okay. Used and Abused says, what are the best books for us? Um, that's a great question. And it depends on the person. So there's lots of different books out there, and different people, are at different levels of understanding and different levels of healing. I have a book club, and we just started it a few months ago. We've only read, I think, 3 or 4 books now in it. And so if you go to my website, which is narcissistsupport.com, if you, there's probably not an easy way for me to tell you to get there. I think if you click under book club, which I think is a tab on my website, I post my notes, and I tend to take very extensive notes. They're like 12 pages long for every book that we read. And so, you know, if you're not going to read the book, or if you kind of want a crash course into what the book is about, you can read my notes on it, and then you can feel free to discuss it. I'm in that support group every single day. It's in my support group under a tab called Book Club. That's where the discussion is for each of the books. So right now, we just finished reading the book. No, I'm sorry. The book for March is the Louise Hay book, You Can Heal Your Life. I just posted my notes up today for that. So I highly recommend that book. Another fantastic book that we read for a book club is The Verbally Abusive Relationship, which was fantastic. We read Ross Rosenberg's book on codependency, which had a lot of great points in it as well. We still need to figure out a book for next month, for yes, for April. So if anybody has any ideas, let me know. No, okay, so Adrian is saying that I'm getting a puppy. I wish. I love animals so very much, but I am not getting a puppy anytime soon. I wish I was, but I have no yard and I have no fence where I live, and I'm not home like for long periods of time. So I've thought about getting a cat, starting my collection, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, Excuse me. Okay, let's scroll up a little bit here. Let's see if I missed some questions. Jones Rising says thank you about the cognitive dissonance question. You're so very welcome. Some people are mentioning the book Psychopath Free. Yes, fantastic, fantastic, fantastic book. Let's see. Okay, scrolling up, scrolling up. Somebody had just posted. I had it and I lost it. Doug, I don't know if this is in response to somebody else or kind of if this is going on with you. Doug says, I wish my MS would go away. So I strongly encourage you to read that book. You Can Heal Your Life. Okay. And in it, she talks about all of these different physical ailments that people have. So, MS is one of them. So MS is like an inflammatory disorder, right? Or at least that's part of it. And talking about like the damage that stress and guilt and these different emotions, how they manifest in our body. And it's super, super, super interesting. So I would just encourage you to read it, because I know from what you've shared about your story is that you've had a lot of really intense, unpleasant emotions for a really long time. And I would be curious if you were to read that book and do some of those exercises, kind of where that would leave you and how that would possibly help. So, just as a side note for that, so my father is very controlling and he's very micromanaging, and he yells a lot. And my brother lived with him for a long time. My brother developed fibromyalgia when he was like 18 or 19. Lived with my dad until he was probably like late 20s. And it was so bad for him. There were times where he would walk with a cane, and he looked awful. He would go to all kinds of doctors. They didn't know what was wrong with him. And it was interesting because I don't live there. Like, I live in Michigan. They live in Texas. He When I would go down to visit, which was only not very often, because that whole environment is just, it's not it's just not my place. So I would go to visit him, and to me, right away, I'm like, wow, no, I know exactly why you're sick, because your environment is really, really toxic. And this is like become normal for you. It had become very normal for him to live with this amount of stress and pressure and kind of my overbearing father and all of this. And so when he got out of that dynamic and finally moved out, he has been like so significantly better. So, there's a lot to be said for our environment. S9, we're talking about dogs and stuff and animals. Says, I always get rescues. My dog died this summer. I still miss her. Oh, yeah. Dogs are, animals in general are just the best thing ever. Like, I just love them so much. And I always get rescues too. I don't even get animals find me. It's like what always ends up happening. So, um, Peep Beep Meme Creep asks, can I ask a question? Will she answer me? I will answer you if I see your question come up. So yeah, go for it. Um, let's see. I feel like there was another question I saw. Hey, Holocene Man's here. Um, Simone Gray says, Dana, it's me again. Please talk about narcissists and dating websites. Are they lurking in these sites? It seems like there's a lot of them. There's definitely a lot of like super deceitful people on dating sites. Now that they know that they can get, their whole thing is to get sex. So there's a lot of people out there. It's easy for somebody to pretend to be something that they're not on the internet, right? So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier tonight with our brain fills in the gaps of what we really want to believe. And so manipulative people really kind of craft this profile of this perfect person that they really want, this persona, right? And so we can't take people at face value on the internet. Like only seeing them in person and over a long period of time and around other people can we really see them for who they are. But yes, I would agree. I think there's a lot of people, especially married people, out there on dating sites. I forget what the stats are, but there's a lot. Like I would say it's over 50% of people on dating sites are not who they claim to be. So let me. Um, Kevin says, I spent from age 15 to my early 30s with an unexplained fatigue problem. So, um, yeah, that book that You Can Heal Your Life, she goes into a lot of that and about how people have cancer, they have vertigo, they develop hearing issues, vision issues, all kinds of issues. Erectile dysfunction. Somebody had mentioned earlier, lots and lots of issues that are health issues, but they stem from emotional reasons. And if you can work on the emotional reasons, then the health gets back into balance. So, very, very interesting. Marie says MS is an autoimmune disease that affects the central nervous system. Yes, you are correct. And, stress is something that really kicks it off. And it's my understanding, too, that inflammation has a lot to do with that. So there's, it might not be the whole issue, but I think there's always emotional components to physical ailments. It's, you know, it's worth exploring, I think. Anyhow. Okay. Pro Florence asks, anyone deal with a narcopath in the mind games? So, and I'm going to sign off on Periscope here because my phone is going to die. So, if you're still on, I just thank you so much for joining. And we'll see you next week. I'm here every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be calling it a night here pretty soon. We normally go for about 2 hours. So take care and lots of love to you. Okay? Bye. Okay. So Periscope chat is over. Let's see. Yes. So anyone deal with the narcissist in the mind games? I think probably everybody here has dealt with that, and it is difficult. It's difficult to untangle, and this is one of the things that I think we all struggle with is trying to figure out what happened, and is what was our fault, what was their fault, you know um just trying to make sense of everything, because again, there's that fog of cognitive dissonance that settles in, right? And there's the manipulations of it all. So it's very, very confusing. So, okay, Jennifer asks, Dana, please explain the characteristics of a narcopath. So, narcopath is a word that I love. And you know what? Actually, before we get into this, let me make sure I want to get the question a few spots above before it falls out of chat here. Believe in Love says, Dana, if we ever want to date again, do you think it's better if we select the person rather than them selecting us? Oh, honey, yes, hands down. That's exactly how dating should go, right? So you want to be selective. You always want to be selective. This has nothing to do with abuse. This has nothing to do with narcissists. This is how dating should go. So it's about you being choosy and not focused on being chosen, right? It's about you knowing that you have value. It's about you valuing your time and your emotions and your life, and being very selective about who you let into your inner circle. So it's always, always, always about you selecting people for your inner circle, whether it's friends, whether it's a job, whether it's, a significant other. You need to select those people, and you need to have good reasons for selecting them, ideally based off of, trust, and you need to trust them, and honesty and openness and compassion and dignity and respect. Like, they need to be treating you that way, and of course ideally you treat them the same way back, right? But if we're, it's to let somebody in our life that doesn't treat us with dignity and compassion and respect, that's not going to work, right? They're going to cause us pain. We're going to cause ourselves pain if we allow painful people to stay in our life. It's just a matter of how much pain we want to experience, because, you know, they're full of deceit and lies and hurt and heartache. So Dana, please explain the characteristics of a narcopath. So, yes, narcopath. Sorry, my nose is itching. Love this word. It's a blend between kind of narcissist and sociopath or psychopath. So, it's, in my mind, it's a blend between the two of them. It's not an official term. It's a term that's just kind of thrown around in different support groups. So they're half narcissist, half sociopath. So narcissists are known for generally being very grandiose, but they're not all that way. They're narcissists, are very selfish. They're very entitled. They tend to, because they're so selfish, they lack empathy and they lack remorse for other people. It's just all about them, right? They, their selfishness is kind of how they abuse people, I guess you could say, because it's just this blinding degree of selfishness. So if you've ever been around a narcissist, it's like, they're crazy making, especially more of the overt or like the obvious ones. So the obvious narcissists, um, little bug us back. The obvious narcissists, it's all about them. So you can't really get in a word in edgewise. They, always have to be center of attention. It's all about them. They, everything is a reflection of them. Their children are a reflection of them. They're selfish and entitled. Sociopaths and psychopaths, now called antisocial personality disorder, those kinds of people tend to exploit other people. So narcissists tend to outwardly like abuse people because their selfish behavior like freezes people out because it's all about them. Sociopaths tend to exploit other people, so they're more of like your emotional con artists. They're the ones they're oftentimes the wolves in sheep's clothing. So kind of more of what we're calling a covert narcissist is more along the lines of like a sociopath. So they're they have the emotional intelligence to know that they need to say whatever they need to say in order to get whatever they want to get. Whereas more of that overt narcissist isn't going, they're not going to apologize. They're not going to be remorseful for their behavior. They're entitled. They will argue with you. They will justify their behavior. They lack insight as to that they're the problem. And that it's, both of these kinds of personalities are crazy making in their own way. Sociopaths, people tend to get tangled up with them for longer because, when a person says that they're sorry, especially if they seem very sincere, if they're texting you over and over again, if they're bringing you flowers, if they're, these extreme displays of remorse, it seems like, well, they're really sorry, but they're not. Like, they're actors as well. And it's sort of just this whole production. It's like watching, a movie. Like, they're so over the top in all of their actions and all of their words and everything that it's, you know, it's just not real. So, and it's the still all sociopaths are narcissists at the core, but not all narcissists are necessarily sociopaths. So both of them are selfish, right? Incredibly selfish. Sociopaths will continue to exploit a person. A narcissist just doesn't care. Like, you know, um, there's kind of an example out there of like if you were in a swimming pool, a narcissist might, you know, jump on your back and demand that you swim them to the side of the pool because they just don't want to mess up their hair, right? Like it's all about them. Or that they have a cramp in their leg, even though that they're pushing you under the water because they've now jumped on your back. They don't care that they're going to sink you because it's all about them. And how dare you have a problem with that because they have a Charlie horse in their leg or they don't want to get their hair wet. So their actions can kill a person, but their behavior is it's so damaging because they're so selfish. A sociopath might hold somebody underneath the water just because it's fun. That's the difference. Like the sociopaths, it's all a game. They're a con artist. It's all about kind of what they can get away with. So, again, I don't, these kinds of differences are interesting, but I encourage people to not get caught up in them because I get a lot of, and I was this way too for a long time, and I get it. I know that it's nice to have that clarity and that idea for kind of what you're dealing with, right? Especially when you've been in so much confusion for so long. But to me, they're different variations of poison. So it's kind of like trying to figure out, am I drinking bleach or am I drinking Drano? Like, doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. Like, just, you don't want to be drinking poison at all. So, a lot of people will ask me, they're like, well, Dana, how do I know if this person's a narcissist or if they're just like an outrageously big jerk? And the answer is it doesn't matter. You want to steer clear of both of those types of personalities. And kind of to follow up with this, right? So, let me scroll up here. People often follow that up with, they want to know if a person's a narcissist or just, like a big time jerk. The reason they tend to want to know that, and again, makes total sense, is because in their mind, they're thinking narcissists don't change, which is generally the case. But if they're not a narcissist, if they're just a big time jerk, then maybe they can change. And to get people out of that thinking, because we don't know what another person really is capable of doing, right? Or like, to what degree are they a narcissist, right? Or what degree are they really a jerk? Or what degree do they really want to change? These are all variables in change. I always encourage people, put the labels down, like put the labels aside, and get an idea in your mind of a line in the sand, and an idea of what kind of behaviors you would need to see changed, and in what kind of time frame. And then you'll know, right? Because this person ideally is going to have some sort of consistent massive action to take change in order for their behavior to change. If that date and time comes and they still haven't changed their behavior, then you have your answer. Then you know that this person's not at a place where they're ready or willing or able to change. And then you can drive on, kind of knowing that, you did what you could do. And then that way you're not tangled up in, oh, well, no, what if they were misdiagnosed? And this other therapist doesn't think that they are a narcissist, but that maybe they had PTSD. So that way you're not hung up in, oh no, did I make a mistake? You realize, like, labels are nice, they can be validating, but they can also be damaging because people can get caught up in them. So you want to be able to think for yourself and get clear on what you need to have happen for you to stay in this relationship. Okay, question from True Love asks Dana, how do you get past the feeling that they had won? The ex-covert narcissist came from wealth but had $0. I paid for everything, but he is with this new woman who supplied him with a better lifestyle. Well, I don't think that he won, and I don't think that she won, right? So this person is a user and a mooch. So I would consider this really, it's kind of, this was your tuition at the school of hard knocks. And all of your money that you spent supporting this guy, it was tuition. And that we've all paid tuition at the school of hard knocks. And sometimes, honestly, a lot of the time, that's some of the best money you'll ever spend, because you will always remember those lessons. So, you know what? Money is money. It comes and goes. It's everything that we do, there's a lesson in it. And if we can get the lesson out of the pain, then the pain can oftentimes be our greatest teacher. So I would try to just kind of reframe your understanding of your experience and what you went through. Because the gift in that, right? The gift in that is that you learned that you are valuable, that you are worthy of a partner who can, support themselves, that you won't be supporting another adult, right, from here on out. Unless there's some, I don't know, extraordinary circumstances or something, but you're going to find somebody that can hold their own, and that you're going to find somebody that's on the level. And there's a lot of kind of gifts in that experience. And so if you can ask yourself, like, well, what gifts were in this? Then you can kind of sidestep that whole feeling of feeling used and abused. So that's what I had to do with my situation. And I'm really glad that I looked at it that way, because there was a lot of things. There were so many lessons that I got from what I went through that I would not have gotten any other way. Like, I feel like I had to go through this. I had to go through this in order to get this clarity. And so I am a really big believer that everything that comes down this life experience, this path of our life experience, it's for our personal growth. But growth is always painful, and it just, I wouldn't want to repeat it, right? I feel like, okay, I hear ya. I've been around this mountain a few times now, and I'm done. Like, I want off. Like, I'd like off the ride. I feel like I've learned a ton of lessons. I don't want to repeat them, but at the same time, I don't know if I would even change them because I've learned so much and there is so much personal growth that can come from this. So try to just reframe your understanding of it, you know? Um, let's see. Let me see. We'll do a few more questions and then let's call it a night. Um, Yes. Oh my gosh. So Simone says, I have a hard time with letting go of the desire of trying to understand him, to stay in the relationship, just to psychoanalyze. Why is he mistreating me? I guess it's so I can fix him. Yeah, I think, well, it's understandable, right? I mean, these relationships are so confusing, so confusing with what's going on. And we've been in a fog for so very long. So it's understandable that you would want to stay in this relationship so you could get some closure, right? So you could try to make sense of it. I think a lot of people do that. Um, and yeah, I think part of it's probably so you can fix him. Because if you can fix him, then you could stay in the relationship, right? Because then he would be this person that you are hoping that he'll be. And it's hard, one of the things that Jack had told me one time was that hope dies last. And that's very true. And it's very disturbing. So that's just something to remember. And that's from the mouth of a sociopath. So, um, you know, Center Within says, I internally thank my last narc for waking me up once and for all to the fact that narcs are everywhere and anywhere, and it's time for me to wise up. Without him, I'd still be naive. Yes, and you know, um, yeah, I think a lot of people when we get to this certain place in our healing and our understanding, and it does take some time, right? Because it's there, if anybody had even suggested to me like 6 years ago that anything good could have come from this, I probably would have attacked them. Like I would have been so angry and insulted, and offended by them saying that. I probably would have just gone bananas. But now that I am healed and I'm far enough away from that, I can see the gifts in the experience. But it took me a while to get there. I think it takes a lot of people a while to get there. And yes, okay, so one of your lessons learned, right, was that there are some really dangerous and destructive people out in the world. And that they often come in wolves in sheep's clothing. That's one of the lessons. There's so many other positive lessons to that as well, right? So like learning to love ourselves, learning about healthy boundaries, learning about what it means to respect ourselves, what it means to treat ourselves with value. There's a lot of those kinds of lessons in there too, because and learning kind of about the whole our empty buckets, and realizing, okay, this is how this is where I was vulnerable in my life. This was how this manipulative person kind of snuck in. This is the crack that this manipulative person snuck in my life. This is how they got in. And so knowing, okay, this is what vulnerabilities, how they manifest in my life, and this is what happens. And so here's another thing too with manipulative people. I view the manifestation of a narcissist or a sociopath in somebody's life as like a big fire that they can't ignore. But generally, like with any other fire, there's been smoke for a long time. And so I would encourage you to look around in your life and to see, okay, how many other problematic people have I been close to, with friends, with coworkers, with significant others, because odds are it's not just this one person. I'm a big believer in kind of how we do something is how we do everything. So if we have this one vulnerability in our life, right, if we are feeling, let's say, unloved or unimportant, right, then we're probably going to seek out people that may or may not be the best fit for us across the board. We might find ourselves getting, talked into volunteering for things we don't want to volunteer with, and being friends with people that aren't healthy for us, and being in relationships that aren't healthy for us. And it's probably not just that one relationship. So once that's brought to our attention, then it's sort of like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that now I'm kind of seeing how big of a problem this is. And then we can start addressing like the bigger issues and cleaning up. It's a lot, generally it tends to be like a lot bigger of a problem than we realize. And I didn't realize that in my own life until really start till starting this YouTube channel. So it's there's I think there's waves of understanding, and the more you kind of go down this rabbit hole, the more the waves of understanding just keep coming and keep coming. So so yes, there's lots out there. What's interesting though too is center, and I know we talked about going to coda meetings and stuff. So how all narcissists and other types of manipulative people, they have a lot in common, right? So if you've been reading my blog or watching my YouTube videos or talking to other people on the chat or in support groups, you're probably seeing that we're all telling like different versions of the same story. Here's where it gets really weird is other victims are very much the same way. So narcissists have a ton of stuff in common, so do the victims. And we all tend to be very nice and kind and loving. We tend to be the kind of people that we've been looking for our whole lives. And so that's kind of what's neat about coda groups and what's neat about different narcissist type support groups is you're going to find people in there that are the kind of people that you've been looking for a long time. And it's this feeling of, oh my gosh, like where have you guys been all my life? It's uncanny. Like it's just weird. So just a heads up for that. Um Let me scroll down. Yes, so True Love says he was like two sides of a coin. He acted like he believed in spiritual beings and the soul connection and about having empathy, and then being extremely manipulative and covered it up with loving comments. So that was exactly my experience with Jack as well. Um, we, I am a huge Eckhart Tolle fan, and when we were dating, we used to read aloud. We would read aloud Eckhart Tolle often. We would watch them together on YouTube. Um, he really gave great lip service. This understanding of like, letting go of ego and being very, just kind of very spiritual and connection. And I really felt like he was my best friend. We got along famously. And it wasn't until I just happened to stumble across his double life that I realized all the level of deceit and the level of lies. And so if you're familiar at all with my story, the last, I don't even know, at least 6 months or so of our relationship, I had not been feeling well at all. And I had thought, well, maybe it was depression or it was, altitude. We lived really high up. If it was a propane leak, I didn't know why I felt drugged. That's how I felt. I felt drugged. And um, when I stumbled across his double life, um, I was working at the at a domestic violence shelter at the time, and somebody there had just mentioned one day, they're like, "Did you ever wonder if maybe he had been like poisoning you or drugging you?" And when they said that, everything made sense. And he did all of the cooking. He brought me coffee in bed every morning. He was with me for, he thought I had a lot of money. He thought I was going through this divorce. He thought I was going to get this huge divorce settlement. I didn't. I walked away from pretty much everything. Um, and he didn't, I guess he didn't believe me. And so I was supposed to be funding, we were going to start a business. I was going to be funding all of it because his credit was terrible. And I really think that his whole plan was for me to fund it and then he was going to just kill me. I really fully believe that. So, yeah, it's really messes with your mind when you are dealing with a person who is two very different people, like two very different sides of the same coin. So, and had I not, in my situation, it was just, I found out so much information all at once. It was really hard. I mean, there was no way the cognitive dissonance, you know, like, I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't want to believe it, but it was so much information I couldn't deny. Like, there was nothing that he could say that could have made me believe him at that point. And plus, I ended up talking to his ex wife. I chatted her up on Facebook, and she told me very much the same story, that they had gotten married, and kind of right away he'd upped and quit his job, which he'd done with me as well, and she was supporting him, and that shortly, like a week or two after they were married, some friends of hers thought they saw him on a match on Match.com. He had a picture of like just his eyes or something, and she'd caught him on dating sites a couple times and like sex camming with people. This was again like 15 years ago, and within they were she'd asked for a divorce like 3 months into their marriage. And then here's the funny thing. So the gig is up, right? Like she's caught him, he's online dating, like she's got hard evidence, and like, we're done. Like, I don't know who the hell you are, but you can. She even said, because she was just like so done by that point. um he was going to move out, and she's like, you can stay here till you find a place, but you need to start finding a place. Well, and then she decided she was going to start dating again, so she just got out there and was dating, and he flipped out, started throwing her stuff outside. um and it was totally wild because she did nothing wrong, right? But in his mind, she did. Like, she was cheating on him, and that's what he had told me, as a matter of fact, that she had cheated on him, and that's why they got a divorce. So these people are just, they're freaking full of it. And it's really hard to sort out. And how would any of us have known, you know? So, toxic relationship no more says, "Oh yeah, Dana, my narc kept watching the shows you talked about earlier, and she would talk about the mistakes made and how she would do things differently, and I had a suspicion that she was giving me antifreeze." So, yes, so S9 says, at the, trust your gut. Yep, trust your gut. I know. Marie says, haha, the notion of leaving ego out of it coming from a narcissist, that's hilarious, right? I agree. It is hilarious. Like, but they do such a good job at being, or the sociopaths more do this. Narcissists tend to not hide it very well, but, or the covert ones tend to hide it well. They just they're chameleons. They're just whatever they need to be in order to get whatever it is that they want to get. So, oh, I keep forgetting. Yes, you're the same old Suzanne. Yes, yes. Everybody is saying trust your gut and go with your intuition. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. Ghost Hunter says, when I had my paranormal team, my gut instinct was telling me that there was talking going on behind my back to get rid of me. It was a group I had started, and it turns out I was right. So here's the thing with gut instinct, right? It's very rarely wrong. That was the one thing that when I was trying to make sense of everything that I went through, and I was trying to figure out, like, how on earth did I misread the situation so bad? Like, how did I not see this coming? Right. And the only thing I could look back at and point to was I had a funny feeling. I had a lot of funny feelings about Jack early on in our relationship. And again, I had a lot of funny feelings with Steve. I glossed over those feelings, thinking to myself, with Jack, I just kind of thought to myself, well, nobody's perfect, I think was my rationale with that. And then with Steve, it was kind of the same thing. Well, nobody's perfect. But then it was also, I must be hyper vigilant because of everything that I went through with Jack. Like, that must be why I feel this way. But the reality is no, because all of my friends and family loved Steve. He was so charming and handsome and the whole package. and funny and witty and everything. Everybody loved him. But I had that feeling. And so that's why it's so important to go with your gut instinct and trust your judgment, because odds are you're right. And so, like, it's go with your gut. Go with your gut. So, um, yeah, you won't regret it. So, guys, I think let's call it a night. It's 11:20 my time, and so, again, if you're interested in my support group on Facebook, it's called Healing After Narcissistic Abuse. And again, it's a closed group, which means that your friends on Facebook can see that you're a member of the group, but they can't see what you're posting, and unless, of course, they decide to join the group. So if you're worried about somebody watching you or finding out that you've joined this group, I'd recommend that you create a fake profile on Facebook that you're using to join support groups for. And if you do this, make sure you put some pictures in it and stuff. So those of us that moderate different support groups, because we get a lot of spammers, are people that join that are spammers. So make sure you put pictures and stuff in your profile, so we know that you are like a legit person and not a robot. So, okay, guys. Yes, good night. You're so very welcome. Great questions, great conversation, great supporting each other. I love how you guys really do just kind of band together in the chat, and people are answering each other's questions. And I love that, because I can tell that other people are having these aha moments and they're passing them on to each other. And you know the best way to really know a subject is to teach it. So the fact that you're able to educate other people about this, it's just really awesome. Oh no, Suzanne, you messaged me about the resume problem, but you haven't gotten an answer. I will check my messages tonight, okay? And we will figure this out either tonight or tomorrow. I am so sorry. I don't know. I'll have to. I get so many messages. I have to make sure to remember to check certain ones. So I'm making a note of it. I'm really really sorry. This is the second time this has happened to you, and that's not okay. So we'll get you figured out, okay? So I will talk. Facebook page is called Narcissist Support, and Instagram account is also called Narcissist Support. So I hope to see you guys there. Instagram has been my new like my new favorite thing. I'm on it all the time. So yes, there you have it. So okay, guys, good night. I love you. Take care. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. Okay. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon. And Suzanne, I'll be looking for your message. Okay? Okay.